We are now under 100 days until the midterm elections. So let's look at this week's edition of The Battlefield.
The polls are shifting. The map is changing. The fight for Congress is on. This is The Battlefield.
The first thing that stood out to me this week, two major spending stories, one on the Democrat, one on the Republican. On the Democrats, the Senate Majority PAC had a July 23rd spending announcement where they're going to reserve an additional $54 million in television advertising across 4 Republican-held Senate seats: Ohio, Iowa, North Carolina, and Alaska. They're in play, and that is a potential issue for Republicans.
If you're watching this on YouTube or you're on either of our Substacks, you can find my live stream from just a couple of days ago with the spokesperson for Senate Majority PAC, Lauren French, who walked us through their strategy and what they're seeing in all of those races that you just laid out.
When you look at the Republican side of the spending ledger, the Senate top GOP super PAC said they're launching a $17 million summer ad campaign in North Carolina. The only reason you're spending money in North Carolina in the summer is because this race is getting out of hand, and you're going to try to pull that back. The one big glaring thing that happened is Republicans in Texas are refusing to spend any money. Both the Senate Leadership Fund, which is the Republicans, and MAGA Inc. have not reserved any ad dollars in Texas right now.
Wow.
Now, that's a big issue because we estimate it takes about $15 million a week in super PAC advertising to mount a comprehensive paid media campaign. And right now there is zero. There's something like 18 plus television markets, and we're looking to see who's going to blink first. The Senate Leadership Fund doesn't really have an interest. The Republicans doesn't seem to really have an interest. They backed Cornyn. They're looking at MAGA Inc. and saying, you created this mess, you fix this mess. But every day that we lose spending in that battlefield, because right now the Democrats ahead by all public polling, is we get further and further behind. That doesn't mean we can't win, but it means we may have to spend a hell of a lot more there, which means when we go back to the Democrat targets, like in Iowa or Ohio, there may not be money left to spend. This is a big deal right now for Republicans. We are defending a lot, and we don't have the resources in states we need to hold.
That's a really fascinating insight into how Republicans are deploying their resources and this emerging Texas standoff.
There's a report in Axios that Elon Musk is going to start jumping into the midterms. He's going to revamp his dormant America PAC, and he's going to start spending a lot of money to try to help out Republicans. They're going to focus on door knocking, advertising, and direct mail towards a conservative base, towards low propensity voters. Now, this is something that can really be a game changer. And for those of you who may not remember, part of the reason why Trump was able to win this last time is we targeted those voters that do not vote in every election and push them out to the polls. And the fact that Elon Musk is starting to jump in and going to spend money is an interesting fact because it could help in some of those tight races and improve the margins.
We have polling showing that low information voters and low propensity voters have also shifted radically toward Democrats over the last 2 years. That is a big deal, and it makes the task for Elon Musk or anyone else who's going to try to mobilize these kinds of voters that much harder.
Is Trump becoming a liability, and how much will he force himself into a lot of these campaigns? And this is the example I'll use. Trump announced this week he's going to end subsidies for Medicare drug premiums. Now, as a Republican, as a conservative, I think it's probably the right thing to do. But it should have been done in 2025, not announced 3 months before the election, because what you did is you just created a campaign ad for every Democrat to run that's going to target seniors who, by the way, vote the highest margins of any group out there. Trump just gave Democrats a campaign ad to say, we're going to make your drug prices more expensive. The other side of this is how many times is he going to show up? He showed up in Michigan and started campaigning and claiming the economy is in great shape. It feels completely detached from reality, especially right now when Trump's approval numbers at 34%, 73% say he's focused on the wrong problems, and 78% of Republicans only approve of him. Now, that sounds like a lot, but in order to win elections, you need about 92% of the Republicans to vote for you. That's a significant margin. And that's why we're seeing Republican enthusiasm only about 19%.
First of all, regardless of what happens in the Michigan primary this upcoming week, I thoroughly invite Donald Trump to make a return trip to Michigan. Best thing that could possibly happen to Democrats there. Americans for Prosperity Action, the Koch-linked super PAC, found that in Iowa, Ohio, North Carolina, Montana, New Hampshire, and Michigan, does those sound like potentially significant states to you, Matt?
Yep.
A fifth of Republicans are telling them they're either going to stay home or they're going to vote for Democrats. 1/5. So that's the kind of reaction you're getting from base Republican voters in these kinds of places. And I'm sure that Donald Trump inserting himself even more is not going to be helpful.
Not even a little bit right now, because in these swing states, he's toxic. How does this match up on the Midterm HQ report?
Over on Midterm HQ, and we can take a look at the scoreboard here, it has been a theme week, and I think you'll see what I mean. So looking at our structural indicators, I want you to cast your attention to the blue arrows. That's what indicates that things have moved in the Democrats' direction, or generally benefiting Democrats. Let's look at Donald Trump's net approval rating, his net approval rating among independents, the generic ballot as measured by two different sets of polling averages, consumer sentiment, and gas prices. I am seeing a 6 for 6, baby. I am seeing nothing but upward facing blue arrows for Democrats. I want to hold on this number that caught my eye. We can talk about it in a minute, put it in the parking lot. But there's another piece of evidence that came in over the last week, which is some ratings changes from Larry Sabato at the UVA Crystal Ball Center. And they moved 5 House races from leaning Republican to toss-up category. So that's in Democrats' direction, another upward blue arrow. And John Ossoff in his Senate race also getting moved from lean Democrat to likely Democrat, a much more secure position. I will say that lines up with the only movement we saw in Senate race polling averages this week, where Ossoff actually improved his position by 2.1 percentage points to a Democratic leaning margin of 7.6 points. And so what you're seeing really across the board here is a variety of ratings and structural indicators all going in the same direction, all trending blue.
How does this match up on the map? How does this look compared to previous cycles? And what are you seeing there?
It was a really interesting week when it comes to the map. There were independent findings from 2 of the major race rating outlets this week, Charlie Cook and Larry Sabato, looking at the House map. And they both found that the map has shifted by about 2 points more Republican since 2024. That sounds like advantage Republicans. But hold on, because there was some additional analysis out of that Larry Sabato shop showing that actually, and this goes back to that number that I put in the parking lot just a moment ago, actually, if you compare the map to 2018, what you find is that there were 233 districts that were reasonable targets for Democrats where they had a substantial chance of winning. 233 seats back in 2018. Here in 2026, it's 234. So even while the overall map has indeed redshifted, the number of targets available to Democrats, plausible pathways to them gaining the majority, has actually also improved. It just underscores the fact that there is a clear lane pathway for Democrats to retake the House, despite all of the gerrymandering induced movement toward Republicans.
All right. So you've looked at all of this. You've sifted through all the numbers, so not everybody has to. What's your takeaway this week? What's your bottom line?
My bottom line this week is that it's awfully hard to call this anything other than a hands down win week for Democrats when you've got all the structural indicators and race ratings all going in the D direction. I will say, though, that the bigger thing for me this week was what didn't happen. And it's something that I lay out in more detail on Worth Knowing with Matt Robeson, my Substack, and this week's Midterm HQ. It's what I call the burning lottery ticket principle. Look, Matt, you and I have both managed and consulted on campaigns. What you're really looking for is opportunities. How are you going to move things? Every single day that goes by, if you're behind, where you fail to make up ground, where you fail to take advantage of your opportunities, is like a lottery ticket that you could have used to win that day that you didn't. And hence, it's like lighting a useless lottery ticket on fire. That's what the last week has felt like to me. Republicans, they're missing the boat on them. And so that's 7 lottery tickets that are on fire over the past week. The biggest reason that this was a win week for Democrats is not because of what happened. It's because of what didn't happen. How do you see it?
Exactly right. That's why Texas is such a big deal. The fact that there's no ad spending in Texas is a real problem. Republicans have not done what we need to do right now. We are behind the 8 ball. We are setting ourselves up for an epic loss. My only ray of hope this week was Elon Musk. And wow, I just don't want to have to depend on Elon Musk bailing us out, because that is hard to manage.